I felt the ghost of my husband's hand leave mine the moment I slid the ring off. It made no sound when it left my finger, just a small, private sigh of skin releasing metal, like a secret I hoped no one would ever have to keep. I stood by the kitchen window with the afternoon light making a thin halo on the countertop, and I stared at what 39 years of marriage had been compressed into, a gold band, dented on the inside from where it had tapped against pots and doorknobs and the edge of the ironing board. "It's only a thing," I whispered to myself, because that's what you say when your heart is trying to make an inventory of what can be spared. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old. My knees complain about the stairs when the weather changes, and until last spring, I believed love, especially a mother's, was a currency that could never go bankrupt. David called that morning with the voice he has always used when he needs something. I recognized it from the time he was 6 and wanted an extra popsicle, from the time he was 19 and wanted the car for the weekend, from the time he was 30 and wanted to borrow money just until the end of the month. He didn't ask about my sleep or the clicking noise in the boiler I'd mentioned last week. "Mom," he said, soft first, then urgent. "The bank made a mistake. The transfer is stuck. I have to make payroll by Friday or I'll lose the guys. They've got families." He exhaled like a man carrying a sofa up a narrow staircase. "It's not a lot. I just need something to tide me over. 2 weeks, 3 at most." I looked around my kitchen the way people look around a lifeboat for an extra oar. The bread box, the chipped blue mug, the calendar with lilies. I have a modest pension and a widow's benefit, and I am careful. There is no extra anywhere, only small islands of enough. But his voice pulled at me, and an old memory rose up. David at 5, cheeks fever red, lying against my chest while I counted seconds between coughs. I thought of how I would have broken my ribcage open to warm him. "I can give you a little from my savings," I said. "Not much." Silence, then a smile I could hear over the phone. "You're the best, Mom." The bank would take 2 days. The ring would take 1 afternoon. I wrapped it in a handkerchief embroidered with my initials and the year I married Arthur, M&A 1971, and I walked to Mr. Khan's shop because he is a kind man who sells secondhand watches and fixes clocks that have forgotten what time is. He looked at the ring under his lamp. "It's good gold," he said, and I tried not to hear Arthur's laugh in the word. Mr. Khan hesitated, as if he could see a photograph inside the metal. The church steps, my mother's tight smile, Arthur's nervous fingers. "Are you sure, Margaret?" I nodded and felt my throat do that shiver it does before you cry. "It's for my son," I said, like a spell that should make the world behave. When I gave David the money, he hugged me quickly in the doorway, one arm already half turned toward the street. He smelled of aftershave and coffee, and a worry he didn't want me to see. 2 weeks, Mom, he said, and then again more brightly, as if brightness could make it true. Emma, my daughter-in-law, waited in the car. She waved, lips pressed thin. We have never understood each other. She grew up with a different dictionary for love, I think. In hers, the word is followed by a comma and then a list of conditions. Still, I waved back, and I pressed my palm to the place on my finger where the ring had been. It felt like a tooth you can't help prodding with your tongue. 2 weeks became 3, then a month. Each time I called, there was a reason that behaved like a small, polite guard dog. It barked just enough to keep me from straying further into questions. The client is late. The accountant is sick. The paperwork is crazy. I learned new phrases like cash flow crunch and bridge the gap. Emma answered once and said, "We're handling it," in a tone people use for rogue pigeons on a balcony. I could hear my granddaughter, Lily, in the background, singing something from school, the safe high notes of a child who believes doors open when you push them. I began to trim small pieces from my life, cheaper tea, a bus instead of a taxi when my hip ached. I told the church committee I couldn't donate for the roof this year, and the look on Ruth's face made me want to explain everything. But I didn't, because shame is a strange animal. It creeps in even when you know you did the noble thing. I did not tell anyone about the ring. At night, I'd open the top drawer of my dressing table where the handkerchief used to be, and my fingers would close on air. Sometimes I dreamed I was swimming and the water kept slipping through my hands, no matter how hard I cupped them. One Sunday, I decided to bake. When the house smells of cinnamon and apples, the heart takes courage. I texted David, "Pie in the oven, come for dinner?" He replied a thumbs up, and we'll see how the day goes. At 4, I set the table for 3, then for 2, then carried the extra plate back to the cabinet with a ceremony that felt like a tiny funeral. At 6, he called, "Mom, we're across town. Lily's got a thing. Another night, yeah?" I heard Emma say something muffled, and David laughed because sometimes people laugh when they are near something that scares them, and they want to shape their mouths around a softer sound. That night, the boiler finally gave up its sighing and decided to be silent. I put on an extra sweater and went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. At 2 a.m, I cupped my hands around a cup of lukewarm tea and watched the dark like it was a long hallway I needed to walk down. I made a decision that felt like stepping onto cold tiles. In the morning, I would go to David's office. I would bring him a sandwich and a thermos of soup like I used to do when he studied for exams, and I would ask, not demand, just ask, when I could expect the money back. I rehearsed the sentences, smoothing them, taking the anger out the way you pick bones from fish. His office sits above a car wash in a building that is trying not to remember it used to be a warehouse. The sign on the glass door says D. Parker Solutions, which is not a sentence, but it is bold and blue. Inside, a young man at a desk looked up with the reflexive kindness of someone who has not yet learned to camouflage it. "Can I help you?" "I'm David's mother," I said, and he smiled. "He's in a meeting," the young man said, then glanced at a calendar. "Actually, he's out for the day." He leaned in as if telling me a secret that wasn't his to keep. He, won't be here much this week." "Can you call him?" I asked. The young man dialed and listened. "Voicemail," he said, apologetic. I left a message with my careful voice. "Hi, darling. I brought you lunch. Call me." I placed the sandwich and thermos on the corner of the young man's desk, like they might cast a small spell, and walked back down the stairs to the street, the smell of soap and hot rubber rising into the January air. My phone stayed quiet. Birds argued on the telephone wire, and somewhere a siren threaded its way through the city like a needle pulling a red string. I didn't go home. I took the bus to their house. I'd never just turned up before. Emma likes notice the way some people like flowers, and I didn't want to bruise her preferences. But I am a mother, and there are moments when that title is a key that fits every lock. When I reached their street, I noticed their car wasn't in the driveway. Fine, I would leave a note. I climbed the front steps and reached for the bell, and that's when I saw it. Tucked into the corner of the window, half hidden by the curtain, a discreet white sign with blue letters. At first, my brain refused to read it. Then it did. For sale. I could feel my heartbeat move from my chest to my mouth. I rang anyway. No one answered. I pressed my forehead to the glass, cupping my hands to kill the glare. Inside, the living room was bare. The rug with Lily's juice stain was gone. The bookshelf where David kept the history books I bought him when he was 13 was empty, a mouth missing its teeth. On the floor, near the dining room doorway, lay a single shoelace, as if a ghost of a child had untied her shoe and forgotten to tie it again. The sign wasn't new. The corners had softened in the weather. How long had this been planned? Before the call? Before the ring? I backed away and sat on the step. A neighbor I didn't know came out with a bag of recycling and nodded hello the way strangers do when they live near a story they don't know. I texted David again, a small, stubborn message. I'm at the house. Call me. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was not a call. It was a message with a sentence so carefully chosen, it had no fingerprints. Mom, don't come by unannounced. Things are complicated. We'll talk when we can. I stared at the words like they were a door that had learned to lock itself. That evening, after the bus deposited me 2 streets from home and I'd climbed the last 3 stairs with the railing as my partner, I found an envelope on my doormat. No stamp. My name in Emma's neat handwriting. Inside was a page, printed, official. Notice of change of contact, it began, as if I were a utility company that needed updating. It informed me that all communications about financial matters should be directed to their accountant. At the bottom, there was a note in pen. We need boundaries, Margaret. My fingers trembled so that the letters blurred. I placed the note on the table and looked at my left hand. Ringless, honest, foolish maybe, but steady. I had given my wedding ring to help my son, and today I had stood on his empty porch like a solicitor. Somewhere between those 2 points, something in me had turned from solid to liquid. I sat down, the boiler cold, the house listening, and I let my breath find a rhythm that didn't hurt. I don't know if courage is the opposite of grief, but I knew I would need both. Because love may be a currency that does not run out, but trust. Trust has a ledger, and tonight the numbers would no longer let me look away. When I woke the next morning, the house felt heavier, as if the silence had grown bones overnight. The envelope Emma had left sat on the table where I'd abandoned it, a pale square of rejection that seemed to glow in the dim light. I didn't touch it. I made tea, burnt the toast, and stared out the window at the neighbor's birch tree shaking in the wind. For a moment, I let myself imagine Arthur sitting across from me, the newspaper half folded, his finger tapping the headline. He would have said, "Margaret, don't let them treat you like this." But Arthur was gone, and the only tapping was the nervous beat of my own hand against the mug. I told myself I would not call David that day. Mothers make rules, then break them. By noon, I was on the phone again, pressing redial with a hope that shrank each time the line went to voicemail. "It's Mom," I said after the beep, keeping my tone light, as if a light tone could erase the truth. "I just want to see you, darling. Lily must be getting so tall." My voice caught on the word tall. I hung up quickly, ashamed of my own tremble. The day stretched like a rubber band. I tried to knit, but the yarn knotted. I tried to read, but the words drifted. Finally, I put on my coat and walked to the market. People were buying fruit, chatting over the fish counter, children tugging at sleeves for sweets. Life was moving, ordinary and sturdy. I bought a single apple and held it like proof that something could still be simple. At the register, Mrs. Henderson, who has known me for 40 years, looked me over. "You all right, Margaret? You look pale." My throat closed. I almost told her everything, about the ring, about the empty house, about the note that said boundaries, like I was some wild hedge that needed trimming. Instead, I smiled and said, "I'm just a little tired." She patted my hand, and I nearly broke under the kindness. When I got home, the phone finally rang. For a second, my heart leapt like a child at recess. It was David. "Mom, listen," he began too quickly. His words ran ahead of him like water down a drain. "Things are complicated. We're moving some assets around, and Emma thinks it's best if we take a step back. You'll get the money, I promise. Just not now." I swallowed. "David," I said softly, "do you know what I gave you? Do you know what that ring meant?" There was silence, then a sigh. "Mom, it was just a ring. Don't be dramatic." The floor seemed to tilt. Just a ring. 39 years of marriage. My whole youth, my vows, my Arthur's hand slipping mine at the altar. Just a ring. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the ache spread like spilled ink. "David," I whispered, "I gave it because I trusted you." He cleared his throat. "I can't talk now. We'll figure it out later." Then the line went dead. I sat with the phone in my lap, its silence louder than any argument. Outside, the birch tree swayed, branches scratching against the glass, as if begging to be let in. I pressed my forehead to the cool window and thought, when did my own child become a stranger at my door? That night I couldn't sleep. I walked from room to room, touching the backs of chairs, the frames of photographs, as if reminding myself what was still mine. At Arthur's picture on the mantel, I stopped. His eyes, kind even in stillness, seemed to hold a question I didn't want to answer. Was love meant to be given endlessly, even when it was not returned? Or was there a point where giving turned into erasure? I thought of Lily, her laugh, the way her hair always escaped its ponytail, the sticky fingerprints she once left on my kitchen window. She was my hope now, the last bridge to my son. But even that bridge felt like it was cracking under Emma's watchful gaze. As dawn crept in, pale and tired, I made another decision. I would go to Emma directly. If David would not hear me, maybe she would. Maybe, beneath her sternness, there was still a place that understood what it meant to be a mother, to give until your hands were empty. I dressed carefully, as if armor could be stitched from wool and buttons, and set out toward their new address, the one printed coldly on that accountant's notice. My heart beat hard, not from the climb of the hill, but from the knowledge that when I knocked, the door might never open the same way again. When I reached the street written on that stiff official notice, I almost turned back. The houses stood neat and freshly painted, each one with trimmed hedges and polished cars in the driveways, as if they had all agreed to keep their secrets hidden under tidy appearances. My breath caught as I read the number on the mailbox, their new address. I paused at the edge of the walkway, clutching the strap of my handbag like it could anchor me against the tide of what I feared. I walked up the path slowly, hearing the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. Every step felt like trespassing on a life I had not been invited into. When I pressed the doorbell, the chime echoed faintly inside, and I braced myself. The door opened, not to David, but to Emma. She stood tall, arms crossed, her expression carefully composed, like a teacher about to reprimand a child. "Margaret," she said, with that clipped tone that always made my name feel like a burden. "Emma," I replied softly, forcing a smile. I just wanted to see you, to see Lily, to know how you're all doing." Her lips tightened. "This isn't a good time." She angled her body so I couldn't see much of the hallway behind her. "Please, I whispered. I just need 5 minutes. I won't stay long. For a moment she hesitated. Then, with a sigh that sounded like surrender, she opened the door just wide enough for me to step inside. The house smelled new, fresh paint, unopened boxes, the faint sharpness of cleaning products. It didn't smell like home, not the way their old house had, with its mix of crayons, coffee, and the faint musk of old books. I looked around quickly, searching for signs of my granddaughter. A small pair of pink sneakers sat by the staircase, and my heart clenched. "Is Lily here?" I asked. "She's upstairs napping," Emma replied flatly, "and I don't want her disturbed." I nodded, though my chest ached. I had come for her laugh, her hug, her small hands reaching for me. Instead, I was standing in a house that looked like it had erased me from its story. Emma folded her arms tighter. "Margaret, you can't just show up like this. We need some space, boundaries. You've been calling constantly, and David is under a lot of pressure. It's not helping." I felt my throat close. "I gave you everything I could," I said, my voice trembling. "I gave you my savings. I gave you my ring, my wedding ring, Emma. Do you understand what that means? It wasn't just money. It was Arthur. It was my life. And now I stand here, treated like I am nothing but a nuisance." Her face softened for the briefest flicker of a second, then hardened again. "You made that choice. No one forced you. We didn't ask for the ring." "But you accepted it," I said quickly, sharper than I had meant. My heart pounded. "And now you shut me out? As if I'm some stranger knocking on your door?" Her silence was answer enough. I felt heat rise in my face, tears threatening to spill. I tried to steady myself by gripping the back of a chair. The room tilted with the weight of what was unspoken. They didn't want me here, not anymore. Then a sound from upstairs, a child's laughter, sudden and bright as a bell. "Lily." My body reacted before my mind could catch up. "Lily," I called, my voice cracking, desperate. Tiny footsteps padded quickly across the floor above. "Grandma?" Her little voice floated down the stairs. My heart nearly broke from the sweetness of it. But Emma moved like a wall between us. "No, Margaret," she said firmly, her hand raised as if to block the air itself. "Not today." I stared at her, disbelief and pain colliding inside me. To be denied my granddaughter's embrace felt like a cruelty deeper than losing gold, deeper even than betrayal. It was the theft of love itself. David appeared then, his shirt sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, as if he had just rushed home. He looked startled to see me standing there. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came because I needed to see you," I said, my voice trembling. "Because you haven't come to me. Because I wanted to see my granddaughter. Because I wanted to remind you that I am still here." He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "Mom, please. We're trying to handle things. It's complicated." "That's what you keep saying," I shot back. "Complicated. Everything is complicated. But love is not complicated, David. A mother's sacrifice is not complicated. What is complicated is how you can take what I gave and still turn your back on me." Emma stepped closer to him, her hand resting on his arm, her stance protective, as though shielding him from me. My own son being shielded from me as if I were the danger. The absurdity of it burned in my chest. "Mom," David said quietly, "we need time. I'll pay you back. But you can't just appear like this. It's not fair to us." "Not fair to you?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Do you know what's not fair? Spending my nights in a cold house because I can't afford to fix the boiler, watching the space on my hand where my ring used to be, empty and aching, waiting by the phone for a call that never comes. That's what's not fair. The room went silent. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in David's eyes, a shadow of guilt maybe, or shame, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said finally, his voice low, "but we have to live our lives our way. You have to let go." His words struck me like a blow. Let go? Let go of my son, my granddaughter, my family, my very reason for every sacrifice I had made. I felt the tears finally spill down my cheeks. I didn't wipe them. They belonged to me as much as my pain did. Slowly I turned toward the door, my legs heavy, my heart heavier still. As I stepped outside into the cold evening air, the sky streaked with gray and fading light, I realized something deep inside me had cracked. Not broken completely, but cracked wide enough for a new truth to seep in. Love given blindly can become a weapon in the wrong hands. And perhaps the greatest betrayal is not in being denied money or objects, but in being denied the place you once had in your own child's heart. I walked down the path, each step feeling like the closing of a chapter I hadn't been ready to end. Behind me, the door shut with a quiet finality. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, if my son had turned his back on me, where would I find the strength to face forward? The walk home that evening felt endless, every corner of the street whispering a memory I wished I could silence. I saw children running with school bags, a mother calling after them, her voice carrying a warmth I remembered once possessing. My chest tightened, not from the chill in the air, but from the hollowness growing inside me. When I finally reached my own front door, the key slipped in easily, but the silence that greeted me was heavy, as though even the walls had absorbed my sorrow. I hung my coat on the rack and stood in the hallway, staring at the faded family photos. There was one of David at age 7, proudly holding up a lopsided clay pot he had made in school. I had kept it all these years, cracked but intact, a testament to how love overlooks flaws. I touched the frame with trembling fingers, whispering to the boy he once was, "Where did you go, my darling? When did you become someone I can't reach?" That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, determined to put my thoughts into words. Maybe, I thought, if I wrote David a letter, he might hear me without interruption, without Emma's cold shadow at his side. I began with shaky handwriting. "My dearest son, you have always been my pride, my purpose. I gave you more than money. I gave you my history, my trust. All I ask is not riches in return, but respect, a place in your life, a hand to hold when mine grows weak." Halfway through, my eyes blurred. I pressed the pen down too hard and tore the paper. Frustrated, I folded it, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it into my drawer. Perhaps tomorrow I would deliver it. Tonight I was too weary. Sleep didn't come easily. I dreamed of Arthur again, standing at the foot of the bed. He looked younger, the way he did when he built our first home, his shoulders broad, his laugh easy. "You must not let them erase you, Margaret," he said in the dream. I reached for him, but he faded into the dark, leaving me with a pillow damp from tears. The next morning I received a call, not from David, but from Ruth at church. "Margaret, are you all right? You've been so quiet lately." Her voice, full of simple concern, nearly unraveled me. I almost confessed everything, but instead I said, "I'm fine, just a little under the weather." My pride was a cage I couldn't quite unlock. I decided to keep busy. I walked to the market again, bought flour and apples, and set about baking pies for the church bazaar. The act of peeling apples, rolling dough, dusting flour, It was like stitching myself back together, one movement at a time. Yet beneath it all, the emptiness lingered, gnawing at me. That afternoon, a knock came at my door. My heart leapt, foolishly hoping it was David with Lily. But when I opened it, it was Mrs. Henderson, holding a basket of scones. "I thought you might like these," she said kindly. I invited her in, and for a while we sat with tea, discussing ordinary things, the weather, the state of the garden, the new vicar. But when she left, the silence returned sharper, cutting. I couldn't resist any more. I dialed David once more. To my surprise, he answered. His voice was hurried, distracted. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something." "David, please," I said, clutching the phone. "I need to know where we stand. I saw the house empty. I saw the sign. You're moving forward, building a new life, and where do I fit in? Am I not part of your future?" There was a pause, and then he exhaled heavily. "Mom, it's not like that. But you can't cling so tightly. We have our own path now. Emma thinks, I cut in, my voice breaking. Always Emma. What about what you think, David? Do you not see what I gave up? Do you not feel what it cost me to hand you that ring? That was Arthur's ring. My heart, my years, our bond. And now you treat me like a beggar at your door." His silence burned. Finally, he said, "I'll pay you back, Mom. That's all I can promise." And then the line went dead. I sat at the table, the phone heavy in my hand. He had reduced my sacrifice to a transaction, my love to a debt. I looked down at my bare hand, at the skin where the ring had once rested, and for the first time, I felt not just sadness, but anger. A slow fire lit inside me. That evening, I wrote again, not to David, but in my diary. I poured out the betrayal, the ache, the rage I had kept silent. The words flowed like a storm. I gave my life for him, and he gave me distance. I gave my treasures, and he gave me silence. If they believe I will vanish quietly, they do not know the strength of a mother wronged. I closed the book with trembling hands. For so long, I had defined myself only as mother, caregiver, giver. But now, I felt a new shape forming in me. A woman who would no longer be invisible, who would not let her love be trampled like worn carpet. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. I stood at the glass, watching the night sky swallow the last traces of light. My reflection stared back at me, older, lined, weary, but still standing, still alive. And in that moment, I realized that if David had turned away, I would have to turn toward something else, toward myself, toward a truth I had avoided, that I could no longer wait for their love to keep me whole. Yet even as that thought settled, a knock came at the door again. My heart lurched. Slowly, I went to open it, and there, standing in the cold, was not David, not Emma, but a man I had never seen before, holding a folder in his hand, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Parker?" he asked, his tone formal. "I'm here on behalf of your son." My knees nearly gave way. The man at my door looked like he had stepped straight out of a gray file cabinet. Tidy suit, neat hair, no warmth in his eyes. He held the folder like it was a shield, and his voice was polite in the way politeness can be sharper than cruelty. "Mrs. Parker, I'm here on behalf of your son. He asked me to deliver some documents." My heart stumbled. "Documents? What kind of documents?" He extended the folder. "It's regarding financial matters. If you have any questions, please direct them to the office number inside." I took it with trembling hands. The paper was heavy, official. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but my upbringing wouldn't let me. Instead, I forced a stiff thank you and closed the door. In the kitchen, under the dim light, I opened the folder. The first page bore David's name, alongside an accountant's letterhead. The words blurred as I read. Acknowledgement of temporary loan. Repayment deferred pending business liquidity. My hands shook. It was written in such cold, clinical language, stripped of everything human. My sacrifice had been reduced to an entry in a ledger, a loan, with no date, no certainty. Attached was a typed note from Emma, her handwriting only at the bottom for signature. For clarity and to avoid future misunderstandings, we kindly request all further communication be conducted through the appropriate channels. My throat burned. Misunderstandings. I had understood all too well. I had given my soul, and they called it a misunderstanding. I pressed the papers flat on the table, staring until the black ink seemed to dance. My chest tightened, as if the house itself was squeezing me. For the first time in my life, I felt the cruel truth. My son didn't see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as a problem to be managed. The kettle whistled faintly, though I didn't remember turning it on. I made tea with clumsy fingers, spilling some on the counter. As I sipped, I thought of Arthur again. He would have been furious, pacing the kitchen, his voice booming. How dare he treat you like this, Margaret? How dare he reduce you to paperwork? The memory both comforted and hurt. Comforted because I could still hear him. Hurt because I had to face this alone. I folded the papers back into the folder and placed it in the drawer with my unfinished letter. Both felt like wounds pressed between pages. The next morning I walked to the church earlier than usual. The hall smelled of polish and old wood, a fragrance of continuity. Ruth greeted me with her usual cheer. "Margaret, we've missed you at the committee meetings. Are you coming Saturday?" I opened my mouth to say yes, but what came out was, "Ruth, do you ever feel invisible?" She blinked, surprised. "Invisible? No, not with all this gray hair." She laughed, then stopped when she saw my face. "Oh, Margaret, what's happened?" I nearly told her everything, but again my pride sealed my lips. "Just tired," I whispered. "Just tired." That afternoon, I sat in the garden despite the chill. The bare branches scratched the sky, and I thought about the seasons. Winter strips everything down, but spring still comes. Would it come for me, or was I meant to live out my days like these branches, empty, waiting for a bloom that might never return? When I finally went inside, I found a small envelope slipped under the door. My pulse raced. Was it David? But no, the handwriting was childish, uneven. I opened it to find a drawing. Crayon strokes in pink and blue. A stick figure with gray hair and glasses, standing beside a smaller figure holding hands. Beneath it, in careful, clumsy letters, "I love you, Grandma. Love, Lily." My tears spilled freely. So Emma had not stopped Lily. Somehow, that little girl had found a way to reach me, her love unfiltered, untainted by grown-up words like boundaries and channels. I pressed the drawing to my chest and sobbed, rocking gently in my chair. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. If Lily remembered me, if she still loved me, then perhaps all was not lost. Perhaps the bond could not be erased by Emma's pen or David's silence. But hope can be cruel too. That evening, my phone rang. David's name glowed on the screen. My heart leapt as I answered. "Mom," he said, his tone weary, "did Lily send you something?" "Yes," I said quickly, clutching the paper. "She did, and it means the world to me." He sighed. "Mom, please, don't encourage this. Emma doesn't think it's healthy. Lily needs stability." "Stability?" I cried. "Is love instability now? Is a grandmother's hand dangerous?" "It's not about that," he said, but his voice wavered. "It's just easier if we keep things simple." "Simple for whom?" I whispered. "For you, for Emma? Certainly not for me. Certainly not for the little girl who loves her grandmother enough to draw her picture and sneak it into an envelope." The line went silent. For a moment, I thought I had lost him completely. Then he muttered, "I have to go," and the call ended. I sat in the quiet, clutching Lily's drawing. My son may have turned his back, but my granddaughter's love was a candle in the dark. I swore to myself then I would not let them erase me from her life. I would fight, even if my hands trembled, even if my voice cracked. Because love, real love, does not vanish. It waits, patient and stubborn, like a seed under the frost. And I, Margaret Parker, was not done being a mother or a grandmother, not yet. The days after Lily's drawing arrived felt different, as if a faint light had slipped under the door of my darkened heart. I pinned the crayon picture on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a daisy, and every time I passed it, I touched the paper gently, as though I might feel the warmth of her small hands through the strokes. It reminded me that not everything was lost, that somewhere behind Emma's walls and David's excuses, a child's love still reached for me. But hope has a way of stirring restlessness. I found myself glancing at the phone constantly, waiting for a call that never came. I wrote letters to Lily, ones I never sent, pages filled with stories of her grandfather, of the summers David spent climbing apple trees, of the lullabies I used to hum. They filled a shoebox under my bed, waiting for a day I prayed would come. One morning, determined not to sink into despair, I decided to take action. I dressed in my best coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and walked to David's office building. I told myself I wasn't there to confront him, only to catch a glimpse, to remind him I still existed beyond the paperwork. The receptionist looked startled when I gave my name. "Oh, Mrs. Parker, I'm not sure Mr. Parker is available today." She shuffled some papers nervously. "Would you like to wait?" I sat on a stiff chair, my hands folded in my lap. Minutes ticked by, stretching into nearly an hour. Finally, I saw him through the glass wall of a conference room. My son, my little boy who once ran through fields with mud on his shoes, now stood in a suit, laughing with two men. He looked confident, in control, untouched by the storm that had wrecked me. When he stepped out, his smile faded at the sight of me. "Mom," he said quietly, as though my presence was something to be hidden. "You shouldn't have come here." "I just wanted to see you," I whispered, "to see with my own eyes that you're well." He sighed, glancing around, clearly embarrassed. "This isn't the place. We'll talk another time." "Another time," I repeated, bitterness creeping in. "Always another time. And when does that time come, David? When I'm gone?" His jaw tightened. "Please don't do this here." He motioned to the receptionist, who looked away uncomfortably. I stood slowly, feeling the eyes of strangers on me. "All right, I'll leave. But remember this, David. Your mother shouldn't have to beg for scraps of your time." My voice trembled, but I walked out with my back straight, the ache in my chest hidden behind dignity. That evening, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't David. It was Emma. Her voice was sharp, controlled. "Margaret, you can't keep showing up unannounced. It disrupts everything. David has enough stress without you adding more." I gripped the phone tighter. "I am his mother. I am Lily's grandmother. I am not a disruption." Emma's tone didn't soften. "We appreciate everything you've done, but we need boundaries. If you want to see Lily, it has to be arranged properly. No surprise visits, no letters, no drawings slipped through doors. Stability is important." "Stability," I repeated, fury rising. "And who decides what stability means? You, Emma? Because from where I stand, stability is love. Stability is knowing you're not forgotten." There was silence, then a sigh, heavy with dismissal. "This conversation is over." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, trembling, rage and grief twining together. For the first time, I wondered if Emma's hold on David was stronger than any bond of blood. She had rewritten the rules of family, and he had let her. The next Sunday, I went to church earlier than usual. After the service, I lingered, speaking with the vicar. He noticed my unease. "Margaret, you carry a heavy burden. Would you like to talk?" And so, for the first time, I opened the door just a crack. I didn't tell him everything, but enough. How I felt pushed aside, how sacrifices had been taken for granted, how silence had replaced laughter in my home. He listened with kind eyes. "A mother's love is enduring," he said softly. "But even love must be respected to flourish. Don't let them convince you that your worth depends on their approval." His words clung to me all day. Worth, respect. Two things I had always given, rarely demanded. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror, longer than usual. The lines around my mouth, the gray in my hair, the tired eyes. They told the story of years of giving. But behind them, I caught a glimmer of the girl I once was, the one who had dreams of her own before she became only mom and grandma. Later that week, another envelope arrived. My heart skipped when I saw the familiar childish scrawl. Another drawing from Lily, a house with 3 figures outside, one tall, one medium, one small. Above them, in big red letters, family. Tears blurred my vision. Despite everything, she still believed we were a family. And maybe, through her, there was still a chance to mend what was broken. But I also knew, deep down, that Emma would not allow it easily. The battle lines were drawn, though I had never wanted a war. I pinned the new drawing beside the first one on the refrigerator. My kitchen now looked like a gallery of love, 2 small papers, defying the coldness of official documents and empty promises. And as I stood there, I made a silent vow. I would not fade quietly into the background of my own family's story. If my son had turned his back, then I would find another way to stand in front of him. Because love may bend, but it does not break, not when a grandmother still has fight left in her heart. The refrigerator door had become my shrine, 2 colorful drawings standing guard against the chill that had invaded my family. Every time I opened it, the crayon lines reminded me that Lily still saw me, still counted me as hers. But the warmth of those pictures also sharpened the contrast, David's coldness, Emma's barricades, the official papers that reduced me to a creditor. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, the phone rang again. My heart leapt, foolishly hoping it would be Lily's voice. Instead, it was David. His tone was flat, businesslike. "Mom, I need you to stop interfering. Emma is upset that Lily keeps asking about you. It's confusing her." "Confusing her?" I echoed, pressing the fabric to my chest. David, love doesn't confuse a child. It comforts them. What confuses her is why her grandmother is being kept away. He groaned quietly. Mom, please. You're making this harder than it has to be. Harder? The word burst out of me, sharp and loud. I gave you my life, my ring, my trust. Do you know what's hard? Sitting alone in this house while my only son tells me my love is a burden. That is hard, David. For a moment, I heard his breath catch. Then he muttered, I can't do this right now, and hung up. I stood in the silence, shaking, the laundry slipping from my arms onto the floor. Anger bubbled in me, not the soft sadness I had carried for weeks, but a hotter, brighter flame. I was tired of being polite, tired of swallowing my pain. Something inside me whispered, you cannot beg for a place in your own family. You must claim it. That night, I pulled out my shoebox of letters and spread them across the table. Page after page of unsent words to Lily. My hands hovered over them, then moved with decision. I chose 3. Stories about her grandfather Arthur, about her father as a boy, about the silly dog we once had named Pepper. I tucked them into envelopes, each with a little flower sticker. If Emma wanted silence, I would answer with my voice, even if it was written. The next morning, I walked to the postbox. My heart pounded as I slid the envelopes inside. It felt rebellious, dangerous even, but also righteous. Lily had the right to know me, to know where she came from. No accountant, no cold signature, no iron wall of a daughter-in-law could take that from her. Later that week, a knock came at my door. My stomach twisted, fearing it was Emma. But when I opened it, there stood Ruth from church, holding a casserole. I thought you might want some company. Her kindness undid me. I invited her in, and for the first time, I told someone everything. The ring, the money, the empty house, the cruel letters, the child's drawings, the silence. As I spoke, Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table, gripping my hand. Margaret, you don't deserve this. No mother does. But listen, your worth is not theirs to decide. You are more than the sum of what they see. Her words washed over me like balm on a burn. After she left, I sat in the quiet and realized something. I had been waiting for David to redeem me, for Emma to accept me, for someone else to give me back my dignity. But dignity is not given. It is claimed. That night, I began to plan. I would no longer wait passively for crumbs of affection. I would show David, show Emma, show the world, even if quietly, that I was not weak, not disposable. The very next Sunday, I attended church with my head held higher. After the service, when people gathered for tea, I shared stories of Arthur, of the house we built, of David as a boy. I laughed, even if the laughter carried an ache. People listened, touched my arm, said how strong I was. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. But fate is cruel in its timing. That evening, as I returned home, another envelope waited at my door. This one was typed, clinical, from their lawyer. My stomach dropped as I opened it. The words cut like knives. To maintain clarity and avoid distress, all unsupervised contact between Margaret Parker and minor child Lily Parker is to cease until further arrangements are made. I sank into my chair, the letter trembling in my hands. So this was their answer to my defiance. Not conversation, not reconciliation, legal walls. I wept until my body ached, but when the tears ran dry, a strange calm settled. They thought a lawyer's letter could erase me. They thought ink on paper could silence a grandmother's love, but they were wrong. I rose, walked to the refrigerator, and touched Lily's drawings. I am still here, I whispered, and as long as you love me, they cannot erase me. Yet even as I said it, a question clawed inside me. How far was I willing to go to fight for my place in her life? I didn't know then, but the days ahead would force me to find out. The letter from their lawyer lay on my table like a curse. I must have read it 20 times, each line stabbing me with the same message. You are not wanted. You are not trusted. You are not family anymore. For days, I carried it around the house, unable to throw it away, unable to accept it. Every time I looked at Lily's drawings on the refrigerator, the paper mocked the cold formality of the lawyer's notice. How could crayon hearts and stick figures coexist with such cruelty? At night, I hardly slept. I paced the hallway, remembering the weight of Arthur's ring on my hand, the warmth of David's small fingers clutching mine as a boy, the joy of Lily's first hug around my waist. Memories became both a comfort and a torment. How could a life of love end in legal boundaries? One morning, I decided to go to the lawyer's office myself. I dressed in my neatest clothes, brushed my hair, and carried the letter in my handbag. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, then I would face them as one, not as a weeping mother, but as a woman with a spine. The office smelled of ink and polish. Behind the desk sat a young woman with a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Appointment?" she asked. "I'm here about this," I said, sliding the letter across. My voice shook, but I stood tall. She skimmed it quickly and nodded. "Yes, this came from our family law division. Do you want to speak to Mr. Collins?" "Yes." Minutes later, I sat opposite a man in a crisp suit. He regarded me with detached politeness. "Mrs. Parker, I assume you received our correspondence. It's standard procedure to establish clear communication channels." "Procedure?" My voice cracked. "You're talking about a grandmother's love. You're talking about a child's right to her family. Is that standard procedure now, to cut love with scissors?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I understand this is emotional, but these decisions are made in the best interest of the child." I leaned forward, my eyes burning. The best interest of the child is knowing she is loved. "Tell me, Mr. Collins, did you ever draw a picture for your grandmother? Did you ever run into her arms? Would you call it in her best interest if someone took her away from you?" He had no answer. His silence was the sound of a man hiding behind his desk. I stood. "You can send all the letters you want. I am still her grandmother. You cannot erase blood with paper." I left before he could respond, my hands trembling but my heart strangely steady. For the first time, I had spoken without apology. That evening, Ruth visited again. I showed her the lawyer's letter, and she shook her head in disbelief. "Margaret, this is beyond cruel. But listen, you don't have to fight this alone. There are ways. There are people who can help." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" "There are community advocates, support groups. You'd be surprised how many grandparents are pushed aside like this. You're not the only one." Her words startled me. Not the only one. I had felt so alone, like my sorrow was unique. But perhaps there was a chorus of voices like mine, silenced in their own kitchens. The next week, Ruth took me to a meeting in the church hall, a circle of older faces, some weary, some defiant. They told their stories, children who moved far away and never called, in-laws who closed doors, grandchildren lost behind walls of pride. As I listened, I felt both despair and strength, despair that so many carried this wound, strength that together we might not be voiceless. When it was my turn, I spoke haltingly at first, then stronger. I told them about the ring, the empty house, the drawings, the lawyer's letter. By the end, My voice trembled with tears. But the room was quiet, respectful. One woman reached for my hand. "You're brave to speak it aloud," she whispered. That night, walking home, I felt lighter, still wounded, but not invisible. Days passed, and then, like a cruel twist, another letter arrived, this time from David himself. His handwriting was quick, impatient. "Mom, please stop causing trouble. I can't handle this stress. You need to accept boundaries. If you continue, we'll have no choice but to cut all ties. I don't want it to come to that." I read it over and over, the words burning. Cut all ties. My own son threatening to sever the bond completely. For hours, I sat in silence. My mind drifted back to the day of his birth, the first time I held him, how small he was, how I promised silently that I would never let him feel alone. And now he threatened to cast me out as if I were nothing. The rage that rose in me was different this time, quieter, steadier. It was not the rage of a broken woman, but of a woman who finally understood the battlefield she was on. If David chose to see me as a problem, then I would become a problem he could not ignore. That night, I wrote in my diary, "They think they can erase me with threats. They think love is theirs to ration. They are wrong. I will not disappear. Not for Emma, not for David, not for anyone. I will fight for my dignity, for my granddaughter, for the truth of who I am." I closed the book, blew out the candle, and went to bed with my heart pounding. For the first time, I felt not just like a victim, but like a woman preparing for a storm. And deep down, I knew the storm was coming. The storm I had written about in my diary did not take long to arrive. It began quietly, as most storms do, small tremors before the earth splits. A phone call here, a whisper there, a glance from a neighbor that lasted too long. People had begun to notice. Word spread in our small community that there was trouble in David Parker's family. And though no one dared to speak it outright, I felt the eyes on me at the market, the polite silences at church. But I was done with shame. If the story was going to be told, I would not let Emma's version be the only one. I started to speak more openly. When friends asked how I was, I stopped hiding behind fine and told the truth. My son has forgotten who I am. My daughter-in-law treats me like a burden. They've tried to cut me off from my granddaughter. Some faces looked shocked, others sympathetic. A few even nodded knowingly, as if they too had tasted this poison. Ruth, ever loyal, encouraged me. "Silence protects no one, Margaret. Speak your truth. People will see." One evening, after a meeting at the grandparents' support group, a man named Harold pulled me aside. He was tall, with kind eyes shadowed by sorrow. "I fought the same battle you're fighting," he said. "My son's wife kept my grandkids from me for years." Do you know what changed it? Persistence. I kept showing up in small ways. Birthdays, school events, letters. They couldn't erase me, no matter how they tried. His words clung to me like armor. Persistence. Not aggression, not begging, just persistence. The very next week, I baked Lily's favorite cookies, chocolate chip with too much sugar, and packed them neatly in a tin. I wrote her a small note in careful handwriting. "For my darling Lily, may every bite remind you that Grandma loves you endlessly." I delivered it to their doorstep myself, ringing the bell before leaving it behind. 2 days later, the tin came back, empty but returned. I found it on my own porch with no note, no message. But the emptiness spoke volumes. She had eaten them. My heart swelled with bittersweet pride. Emma may have rolled her eyes, David may have sighed, but my granddaughter had tasted my love. They could not stop that. Still, the pushback grew harsher. Another curt call from David. "Mom, this has to stop. You're undermining us." I answered calmly, though my hands trembled. "I am not undermining you. I am reminding you. That little girl knows me, loves me. You can close doors, but you cannot close her heart." He muttered something about boundaries, then hung up, as if cutting the call could cut me out of existence. That night, I sat with Arthur's old photograph. "Would you be proud of me?" I whispered. "Or would you tell me to let go?" His smiling face gave no answer, but in my chest I felt the certainty. Arthur would never have let anyone erase him from his child's life. The following Sunday during service, something happened that shook me. As the congregation filed out, a small voice piped up behind me. "Grandma!" I turned, and there she was, Lily, tugging at Emma's sleeve, her eyes bright, her smile wide. For a moment, time froze. I crouched down instinctively, arms open, tears rushing to my eyes. But before she could run to me, Emma's grip tightened on her shoulder. "Not now, Lily," she said sharply, her face pale with embarrassment. She steered the child away quickly, ignoring me completely. I stood frozen, my arms still outstretched, the congregation buzzing around us. Some had seen, some had heard. Whispers began. Emma looked like a woman trying to hold back a flood with a broom. That night, I expected fury. Instead, silence. No call, no letter, only silence. It was worse than anger. It was erasure, deliberate and cold. But the silence gave me clarity. They wanted me to vanish quietly. They thought if they ignored me long enough, I would dissolve into the shadows of my empty house. I would not. The next morning I called the lawyer whose card I had kept tucked in a drawer, not David's lawyer, but one recommended at the support group. His voice was calm, steady. "Grandparents have rights, Mrs. Parker. It's not easy, but it's possible, especially when the bond with the child is clear." Hope flared in me again, sharp and dangerous. "She loves me," I said firmly. "I know she does." "Then that is where we start," he replied. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a weapon, however small. Not revenge, not spite, but the right to stand tall, the right to protect the love that remained between me and Lily. That evening, I opened my diary and wrote with a firm hand, "This is no longer just about me. This is about Lily, about truth, about love that will not be erased. If I must fight in court, in church, in the eyes of neighbors, then I will. Because silence is not love. Persistence is." I closed the book, blew out the candle, and sat in the dark kitchen with only the hum of the old refrigerator for company. My fingers brushed the drawings once more. The storm was no longer coming. It was here, and I was ready. The day of the court hearing arrived gray and wet, as though the sky itself had decided to cry on my behalf. I wore my best navy dress, the one Arthur always said made me look steady as a captain, and carried a small handbag with Lily's drawings tucked safely inside. They were not legal documents, not evidence by any courtroom standard, but they were my proof of love, proof of bond, proof that I mattered in her small world. When I entered the courthouse, I felt smaller than ever. The marble floors echoed with footsteps. The air smelled of paper and fear. Across the hall, I saw them. David in his tailored suit, eyes fixed on the floor, and Emma at his side, spine straight, her lips pressed thin like a blade. My heart ached at the sight of my son, but I forced myself to hold my head high. If I collapsed now, everything would be lost. The judge, a woman with kind but unreadable eyes, listened patiently as lawyers traded words like arrows. Emma's lawyer spoke of boundaries and stability. My lawyer spoke of bond, history, and the child's best interest. Through it all, I sat quietly, my hands clasped, my gaze steady on the judge. When my turn came, I stood slowly, my knees trembling but my voice firm. Your Honor, I am not here to fight for money or property. I am here because I love my granddaughter. She knows me. She has drawn me pictures. She has called my name in public. That bond cannot be erased by signatures on paper. I am 72 years old. I do not know how many years I have left. But I know this. Every child deserves to know the love of their grandmother, and every grandmother deserves not to be forgotten. For a moment, silence filled the room. The judge's pen stopped moving. David's shoulders slumped, and I saw his jaw tighten, his eyes glistening as though some part of my words had cracked through his armor. Emma whispered sharply to him, her hand gripping his arm, but he didn't look at her. He looked at me. Just for a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to run to me when he scraped his knees. The hearing ended without a final decision. The judge requested more time, more evidence, but I left the courthouse lighter than I had entered. I had spoken. I had not been erased. Weeks passed, and though the legal process crawled slowly, a shift had begun. Neighbors who had once offered only polite smiles now stopped me at the market. I saw you in court, one woman said softly. You were brave. Even Ruth squeezed my hand tighter at church. The whispers had changed tune from pity to respect. One crisp afternoon, as I was pruning roses in the garden, I heard small footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was, Lily, her cheeks pink from the cold, her hair escaping its braid, her smile wide as sunrise. Behind her stood David, uncertain, his hands deep in his pockets. "Grandma," Lily squealed, running into my arms. I dropped the shears and caught her, burying my face in her hair, inhaling the pure scent of childhood. My heart nearly burst. David cleared his throat. "Emma doesn't know I brought her. She wouldn't approve, but his voice faltered. "I couldn't keep her from you anymore. She kept asking, every night, every morning." I held Lily tighter, tears streaming freely now. "She should never have had to ask," I whispered. He nodded, shame clouding his face. "I know, Mom. I lost sight of things. I let pressure and Emma tell me what mattered. But seeing you today in court, hearing you," his voice cracked, "I remembered who you are." For a long moment, we stood in the garden, the roses silent witnesses to a fragile peace. I didn't forgive him completely, not yet. Wounds don't close in a single afternoon, but I saw the possibility of healing, and that was enough. We sat on the porch, Lily between us, swinging her legs. She chattered about school, about her favorite teacher, about a song she had learned. Each word was a stitch mending the torn fabric of our family. When they finally left, the house no longer felt as empty. The drawings on my refrigerator glowed brighter somehow, no longer symbols of longing, but of a bond that had survived storms, threats, and silence. That night, I wrote my final words in the diary I had filled with sorrow and rage. I gave my wedding ring to help my son, and he turned his back on me. But love, stubborn and patient, found its way back. Not perfect, not complete, but alive. And as long as Lily runs into my arms, I will never be erased. I closed the book, placed it beside Arthur's photograph, and whispered into the quiet house, "We are still here. Did you like my story? From which city are you watching? Don't forget to subscribe for more.